Hey friends, the theme for today is all about how to get out of your head and more into your body. Actually, more accurately, it's about how to live more fully from your body, which is to say, letting your body lead the way and lead the show just as much as your mind does. So for most of us, this was definitely me for many years. I lived exclusively from the shoulders up. Everything was something I thought about, intellectually calculated, strategized, worried about. It was all very intellectual, all very cerebral. And I am a cerebral person. So I will say, I'm not one of those people who's like, this isn't about instilling fear and feeling like you're not supposed to live from your mind at all, because I believe that your mind can be a really good ally, a really powerful tool. You can become BFF with your friends. And I have to say, in comparison to where I used to be to where I am now, that is like so much more the case. That isn't to say that I'm completely free of like the mind chatter and some of the, the stuff that tends to get in. However, I will say I think part of what's allowed me to become friends with my mind, and in a weird contradictory way, my mind has become more powerful, is that I've also learned how to equally utilize my body to the point where, again, I feel like my body and my mind have come together to both serve their purpose. And I think maybe because I don't my mind isn't the end all be all seem to like of everything. I understand that a lot of times my fears are a lie. I don't need to believe everything that I think. That's part of what's allowed me to utilize my mind as an ally and a friend, a seriously helpful tool. But many of us literally like live from the shoulders up. Like I remember still vividly remembered when I started meditating, like, well, actually, no, this was after I started meditating, but there was a point where I was like, people would be like, live from the body. And I would like roll my eyes because I was like, I don't even know what the hell that means. That sounds like some new age BS. Like, and I've come a very long way. I didn't have access to my body before. That's why. And now I like really do. So, what does it mean to live from your body, and like why is it important? Well, for many of us, like the problem with living from your mind, your neck up, is that when you are living exclusively in the mind, you're going to find that you tend to feel more anxious, more fearful, more limited, more negative, because that's essentially like what our brain is made to do. You know this already. Survival brain, like monkey mind, it's here to protect us, yada, 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 yada. Intellectualizing everything can be like a really wonderful tool for figuring out some of the more like concrete logistical things in our lives. But obviously, like that's very, very, very limited when it comes to needing to make bigger decisions and living from a place of like, it's if we're only exclusively living from our minds, that means we're not at all living from our hearts and our souls. And that is very limiting. Like you're going to have a hard time of life if you're never actually following your heart, right? But there's this, this hallmark idea of like, follow your heart. What does that even mean? That is kind of what it means to follow your body. Like your body is where your intuition and your soul and your heart lies. And that's what I mean when I say like live from your body, and why it's also so important, because you will screw yourself if you're only going to be able to make decisions and judgments from the calculating intellectual standpoint of your mind, I believe. I also am someone who I think naturally is quite indecisive. I'm one of those people who like when there's I like having options, but then at the same time when there's too many options, I'm like, I don't know which one to choose. And making choices from my physical being has been incredibly helpful for that as well. So how do we live more from the body? Like I'm trying to think, how did I get from that person who was like eye rolling at the idea of like being more in the body to like where I am now, where so much of my life and my day-to-day is being led by my body. And it's just, again, I will just say this because I think it's such a much more easeful way to live. It is like so much less stressful to live from the body because your body has like a natural intelligence that can make decisions like pretty quickly if you let it. And if it doesn't feel that way yet, it's simply because you're just out of practice. But just like anything else, you get on that horse, you start practicing, you start connecting with your body. Over time, it's going to become much like more, you know, like in flow. It's going to become more of your default. It's going to become automated, so they say, as they say. So, well, I guess the first place to start is to notice that oftentimes, if you're at the beginning stages of this, or maybe you've just recently experienced some type of trauma, or maybe you're like in a really stressed out phase in your life, it's hard to live from the body if your nervous system is like up here and you're constantly in fight or flight, because then it's a lot of times people are like, I feel like I can't trust my body, because your body is literally like, you know, if you've experienced trauma, it's like being like in a tight little ball, and you're not like loose and relaxed enough to make decisions from that place. If that is the case, then I would say notice where you are. Like, are you in that heightened sense of living where you're constantly like on guard? If that's where you are, then like start there. Then your work is something a little bit different. It is about healing your trauma. It is about probably healing your relationship with productivity and like not needing to work so much, and you know, learning how to like not live from a place of constant stress. It's about what else was I going to say? Common culprits. Oh yeah, safety. Like, you know, this is kind of related to trauma too, but if we don't feel safe in our life, then again, our nervous system is going to be up here, our body's going to be clenched, and we're going to feel like we can't trust our body and make decisions from that place. So I would say that's like a whole school right there. I mean, that's a whole video, that's a whole thing that I could talk about. And that is stuff that I help my clients with. And once they sort of graduate from that level and you're not in a heightened state of like awareness or paralyzed, then you can come to this space of where you can start playing with living from your body a little bit more. And it's really the simple instruction anyway about like, okay, how do you live from your body, is to understand that your body is here to sense things, right? Understand the difference between intellectualizing and analyzing is very different from sensing something. Sensing is something that you have to do from your senses, from your five senses, it's a very multi-sensory thing, right? Because, you know, you could argue that we're not just our five senses. It's feeling. It's like using your body to feel into things, which again is learning how to sense things. So the sensation of things. So this can look as simple as, you know, a very common example that I think I hear often, which is a good one, is asking yourself a question and being like, feeling into your, like giving yourself maybe two options and feeling into your body as to what the answer feels like. Something simple, like, what do you want to have for dinner? Give yourself two options. Do I want to eat pizza? Do I want to eat Chinese food? Close your eyes, get still, make space, breathe, and like just feel. Like, what do you feel like eating? It's not what do you think like eating. What do you feel like eating? And so that's like a super common sort of like basic example that essentially many of us might already be doing, right? So you can just take that and apply that to all the other different areas of your life where you can start feeling into what do you want. So that's like, I think the most common example, or like like a very basic example. I'm trying to think of other examples. Okay, so like in my work, it can be really easy to get tied up into thinking about what I should do, because maybe I have like a long list of things that I need to do. Or how about this? What I should do, like what should I write? What should I share about? It can, if I'm not careful, I can really get into the trap of I should write about this because I'm coming from a strategic standpoint and I'm like, oh, I don't know, my client wants to hear about this, or I think this would be the thing that like gets the most likes, or whatever. And all of that stuff is really disconnecting me and myself from what feels true to me, what feels true to me. Again, it's a feeling, not an intellectual like analyzation. So what I will do, I'm in the common practice of like sitting down, closing my eyes, taking a couple deep breaths, making some space, getting still, and asking myself a question like, what is it that I like, how do I want to proceed with like what I want to write today, or what I want to work on? And I will feel into it, and my body will give me the answer. It's like gonna like, for me, it feels like it's like it like rises up, but for some people, maybe it feels like it drops in. It doesn't, there's all different ways that this can go. The point is that my answer, like just try it out, I guess is what I'm saying. Your body is going to give you an answer. Again, if you're not in a fight or flight state and your nervous system is pretty regulated, you can ask your body for an answer. Your body will give you an answer. Sometimes it's going to be super, super faint, and that's okay. And sometimes it's going to be like instantaneously really loud. Your job then is to trust this answer, because a lot of times what happens is it's not the logical answer. It's not the thing that we want. So then we go, oh, no, that doesn't make any sense. Let me go back to like what my logical brain tells me to do. So half the practice, like the first half is like asking and like sensing and listening. And the other half is really trusting, which is a thing that I think a lot of people that's the part where people struggle with. They don't trust. And then you don't build up the practice. And then you're like, you don't get any confirmation or feedback as to like whether or not this is working for you. And that's really helpful. That's what we need. It's like, we need to be able to trust enough to say, hey, is this working out? And I've just practiced enough to know that listening to the answer of my body is oftentimes very beneficial, or like has worked out really well. So this isn't actually different from, a lot of times people are like, listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. For me, listening to my intuition is very much about dropping into my body. It's about listening to my body. And so if you feel like you want to like build your intuition, like this, I would say this is the way that I would do it. This is the way that I do it. And how I have helped my clients discover their intuition, it's through listening to the body. And I think what happens over time is when you start listening to your body, you start spending more time in stillness with your body. And as a result, you start connecting with your body more. You start becoming familiar with what it feels like to be in the body. You cultivate a stronger relationship with your physical body. And that's important because, again, we need to like, most of us are in mind. We need to like balance it out a little bit. I'm not saying disregard the mind. You still need the mind sometimes. And sometimes it's like a dance that you do. But right now, most of us are just in mind and not in body. So once you start to cultivate this really intimate relationship with being in your body, things are going to kind of like even out a little bit. The other thing that I want to say about that, notice in both examples that I gave when I was like, sensing and how to make decisions, I first created space, because that's really important, especially when if you're making a huge decision, or if this is new to you, and you need to create space. This isn't something that you can do. I wouldn't recommend anyway that you do it necessarily when you're at the grocery store and you're like pushing the cart and you're like trying to like feel into how you feel, or like this isn't something that you do when you're trying to wrangle your kids. You know what I mean? Like, space is your friend. All clarity comes from first a pause or some type of stillness, most of the time. So space is required, stillness. And I think, again, it could take a minute. It doesn't necessarily have to take 20 minutes. It can happen, quickly, at least, especially like as you start to practice this over time. And concentrating on your breath, like that's a really helpful one. Anything that can help connect you to your physical being. So it's like breathing exercises, listening to sound, using your senses to like get grounded, grounding exercises, energy, like type work to get into your body. And what else do I want to say about this? Leading with the body. To me, like this gets to be fun. Like you get to practice. You can go through the rest of your week being like, or even today, like, why don't I ask my body for the answer and see what it has to say? And that in itself can be a hurdle for many of us because we forget to check in with our body and ask. And I still forget too sometimes. Like I get so caught up in like the rhythm of what I'm doing. And that's fine. But then you remember and then you start from there. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about living from the body. I think that maybe what I want to impart on you is that your body is so smart, so intelligent. Your soul, your heart is really intelligent. So like if you have a big decision that you need to make about a relationship, a job, maybe you got in a fight with someone and you're trying to figure out like, how do I feel about this? How do I want to proceed? What's the next step? What do I want to say? The mind just sometimes can get so clouded with chatter, like with superfluous stuff like judgment, fear, scarcity, lack, self-consciousness. Like that's all the mind. And I think the body is a little bit more free of that, which is why you can make truer choices and come to like clearer understanding. The body, I think, can really be like a refuge from all of the noise that's in the mind. And so, yeah, sorry, going back to this topic of like, if you're arguing with someone and you need to think about like, how do you want to proceed and what do you want to do? And it feels heavy, right? And you feel sad because you just got in an argument with someone. Yeah, I mean, it's just really closing your eyes and touching in with yourself and connecting with yourself, being present with yourself. This is the other thing about learning how to be in your body, is that you're practicing presence with the self. And these things are like, all these concepts are all connected. You can close your eyes and be like, what do I feel? And your body is going to say, oh, you shouldn't say sorry to this person. They were the one who started it. They insulted you, blah, 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 blah. And you can begin to differentiate the difference between mind and the body, because your body doesn't say that. That's like your mind. It's all story, 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 story. And your body might come back to saying something like, man, I feel sad. Like you're going to feel sad because and it maybe you feel anger, but the truth is under anger usually is some type of sadness. And you're like, I feel sad. And then you can just like ask the question out loud to yourself if you want to, or just feel into it. Like, what is it that I really want to do? And your body might say something like, you know what, right now, I don't know. It's always going to be something a little bit more gentle, a little bit more wise, a little bit more clear, like your highest self, essentially. It's going to say something like, right now, I think you just need to rest and you need to give yourself some time to process. And maybe the two of you need to just have like, I don't know, a day or something like that to have your own space. And, I'm sorry that you're feeling this way. Why don't you sleep on it and then come back again tomorrow? Something like that. Again, I'm kind of just totally making this up, but my point is like, I give that example because it's so different from like what the mind often says, which is chatter, 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 chatter. And very much like intuition. And this is like something that Glennon Doyle says in her book, Untamed. I think she explains meditation so well, but she talks about intuition, like be still and know. She has this whole chapter on being still and know. And I'm like, if you've ever read that book, I love that chapter so much because she describes meditation so well. It's like when you are still, you will know. And that is a place in which I believe like you are connected to God, and you are connected to source, and which is not separate from you. And she talks about how sometimes your intuition or your body is just going to give you like the littlest piece of information, like the next step, because it wants you to come back again, so that you continue the practice of consistently coming back. It's not going to give you the 10-step program. It's not going to give you the 5-year plan, because like it wants you to continue to come back and be in relationship with it, the source, this infinite wisdom, this higher self, your body. I think, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that we can experience our higher selves, and sometimes there's, yeah, but I will say, like, a body, I think your body kind of needs to be a part of it. So those are my thoughts on letting your body lead your life. It's play, like, go out and play with this. Let their life be the laboratory in which you are just experimenting. And if you have any questions about, like, how can I actually lead more with my body, let me know, and I'd be happy to chat. Okay, bye y'all.